Good morning, good morning. Welcome back to House Anthony's here. We're having a sexual conversation. For those that are new to the channel, we make mental conversations and content that's going to be beneficial to your personal development and just to your well-being, right? In today's conversation, we're going to be talking about exploring nonviolent communication, building compassion with connections. It's essential for us to be able to have, good communication styles, being respectful and being nonviolent, so we're able to have a method of effectiveness, right? So I want to be able to, like I said, illustrate a video where demonstrate some methods for resolving conflicts, improving communication, fostering empathy in relations, and this will be able to help viewers learn and how to communication with compassion, understanding, and helping us build stronger and more harmonious connections, right? So let's just dive into our first segment in regards to introduction to nonviolent communication, NVC. So this is going to be able to be a peaceful, calming environment where people are able to engage in meaningful connections, right? So nonviolent communication, or abbreviated as NVC, is a transformative approach to communication that focuses on, like I said, empathy, understanding, and connection, developed by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. So NVC helps individuals navigate conflicts and engage in more compassionate dialogue. So I want to be able to, talk about some core principles and why this is going to be able to help us have more healthier relationships. It's very important for us to be able to keep your hands to yourself, be able to be respectful, be able to be assertive, and just know when to speak, when not to speak, and, having those respectful dialogues so we're able to have healthy communication. Moving forward, I want to be able to just dive into some key points. The definition of NVC, once again, nonviolent communication. So a communication method that is designed to foster empathy, respect, and understanding by focusing on feelings and needs rather than judgments and demands, right? So we want to be able to understand, and that's why I always advocate for cultural competence, understanding how other people may feel, seeing things at a different lens, having this type of approach than being more judgment and just being more demanding. And when we kind of realign and we kind of have more balance and, like I said, being more assertive in these conversations and our communication styles, it's going to be able to have things be more harmonious and more effective for better outcomes. However, our next key point is going to be origin. So created by, like I said, Marshall Rosenberg in the 1960s. NVC has, since been used globally in various settings, from schools and families to workplaces and conflict zones, right? So this is an effective method and style that is used to be able to help people have more positive and better communication styles, and, like I said, to be able to have better outcomes as well. When it comes to research insight, according from the Center of Nonviolent Communication, NVC has been shown to improve communication, reduce violence, and enhance conflict resolution in diverse social settings. So this is very beneficial. It is used and it is proven. Moving forward, we're going to talk about the 4 components for nonviolent communication, right? So at the heart of NVC, there are 4 components that guide the way we communicate. So I'm going to be able to break that down today. So our first key point in regards to our first quadrant, in regards to that component, is going to be observation. So observations are describing what is happening without judgment or evaluation, focusing on what actually, you observed. For example, I've noticed that you didn't reply to my messages yesterday, right? Next component is going to be feelings, right? So expressing how we feel in response to the observation without blaming or criticizing the other person. For example, I felt concerned when I didn't hear back from you. Our next, third component is going to be needs, right? So identifying the underlying need or value that is driving our feelings, right? For example, I need clarity and connection in our communication. So you're addressing your needs, right? Our last quadrant or component is going to be requests, right? So making a clear, actionable request that can meet our needs without demanding or pressuring. So you're not making a distinctive threat or demand, pressuring someone to make them feel uncomfortable, right? For example, would you be willing to reply to my messages within the next 24 hours, right? Or giving someone a kind of a deadline, but being respectful about it, and being direct in that way, right? So requests. When it comes to research in regards to insights, a study published by the Journal of Peace and Conflict Resolution in 2021 highlighted that how NVC-based approaches to conflict resolutions resulted in 40% reduction in misunderstandings and an increase in cooperative behaviors, right? So this is going to be able to help, like I said, help people be more assertive, respectful, and just having more understanding in how they're able to approach their communication style. Moving on to our next segment, we're going to be able to talk about why nonviolent communication is effective in conflict resolution. Like I said, when we're in different situations, whether it be with family, whether it be at work, we need to be able to know how to be respectful, and knowing how to have nonviolent communication is very important, because we don't want to put ourselves or have one moment dictate our future, right? There's been many situations, there's videos on people that have been incarcerated, and they're breaking down their experience on that 10 seconds or that 60 seconds or that 10-minute interaction led to them, now serving, etc., right? So we want to be able to be rational, we want to be critical, and we want to be able to, have nonviolent communication to be able to have conflict resolution. However, let's just get back on point, right? So by focusing on our feelings and our needs, we can shift our conversation from blaming to understanding, right? On reducing that defensiveness to fostering cooperation and understanding, right? So our key point in regards to why nonviolent is effective in conflict resolution, we're going to start off with de-escalation, right? So NVC helps prevent conflicts from escalating by encouraging each person to express their feelings and needs without judgment. So letting the person express their needs, letting them, talk about how they feel, and then moving on to how can we be able to have some type of resolution and compromise on both individuals, right? Next key point is going to be empathy. One of the key strategies of NVC is to emphasize on empathy. Like I said, actively trying to listen to the other person without interrupting or making assumptions, and really trying to understand what's going on in their perspective, in their shoes, in those feelings and things that they have underwent within those emotions, right? So, listen actively, right? With empathy. Next key point is going to be shifting from blame to responsibility. So instead of pointing the fingers, doing the blame game, NVC encouraging us to take responsibility in our own actions, our own feelings, and our own needs, while also considering the other person's perspective, right? So like I said, we really want to be able to get our concerns out, express how we feel, etc., but we're also got to be able to take in consideration to empathize, take accountability, but at the same time too, like I said, listen to the other person with that empathy. Some research I want to be able to talk about as well is, coming from the Journal of Conflict Resolution, found that individuals who use, NVC in high conflict environments and situations and settings had 30% better outcomes in solving disputes and improving mutual understanding. Like I said, this is going to be beneficial for those that are undergoing these situations. Life, like I always emphasize, is not Candyland. You're gonna have your ups, you're gonna have downs, you're gonna have your disagreements, you're gonna have frustrating moments, but like I said, we're gonna be able to know how to regulate and know how to compromise and have effective conversations and communication, and this is something that's going to be proactive. So I want to take that into consideration. Like I said, nonviolent communication is a high conflict environments, had 30% better outcomes in solving disputes and improving mutual understanding. Moving on, practicing with empathy and nonviolent communication is essential, right? So empathy is one of the core elements of nonviolent communication. As mentioned, it's not about hearing words, it's about truly understanding and connecting with others and other people's feelings and needs, right? And looking at them with empathy is effective with practice. All right, so a key point is active listening. So listening with an open mind, without judgment, practicing with that attention, paying attention to that attention with both verbal and nonverbal cues. So really looking at the body language as well. Next is also going to be empathetic responses. So as you're listening, reflect back on what the other person is, saying and what you're hearing, such as it sounds like you're feeling frustrated because you need more support at work, for instance, right? So really looking at the other person's perspective, looking at their needs and finding ways to support them with empathetic responses, right? They're not just being kind of nonchalant, right? You really want to be active, you really want to be present in that moment. Next is going to be non-judgmental stance. So right, so you want to avoid labeling emotions as good or bad. Instead, validate the person's experience, right? So really just to be present, really just foster what they're feeling, and really just, like I said, really being present. Some research according to the study of Journal of Counseling and Development, empathetic listening with nonviolent communication improves trust and emotional connection between individuals by 50%, right? So but just by you being personal, just by you just being present, by you just being actively listening, really shows that other person that, this person is really here for me. This person not really on some shady stuff. They're not really out here on some non stuff. And let's be real, one thing that we all have in us is authenticity. We all have the ability to feel and understand other people. We're human beings, right? But we got to take into consideration when you're on that shady stuff, you're on that fishy stuff, you're on that nonsense. To be real, people can feel that and they know what's up, right? So like I said, when we're being more empathetic, or being true to ourselves, or really being authentic, or really being personable in these situations, we really can develop that trust and connection within, as that statistic is by 50%. So that's a serious boost right there. And I really want us to be able to take that in consideration with this approach of nonviolent communication. Moving on to our next segment, we're going to be talking about the power of self-connection in NVC, right? So before we can communicate effectively with others, it's important to first connect with ourselves, self-care, regulate, understand ourselves, our needs, etc. But nonverbal communication teaches us to, the importance of self-awareness, self-compassion, and understanding our own feelings and needs, right? How can we be able to connect with others if we're not really in tune with ourselves? So we got to take that in consideration, right? And by doing these proactive things, we'll be able to help us, right? So first key point is going to be self-reflection. So taking the time to understand your own emotions, your own needs before reacting, right? This will help you communicate more consciously and avoid automatic reactions, right? For those people that are just used to just being aggressive, reactive, just popping off, we got to be able to channel our emotions, our thoughts, and really think rationally, because our response to some situations, our reactions to some situations could exacerbate, make things worse, right? And if we don't want it to be worse, and we're over here cleaning up things, making it, we got to think clearly. We got to do the self-reflecting work, get in tune with ourselves, so we're able to make, the right responses for the right situations, so we're able to have the right outcomes, right? So it takes us, a little bit more effort, but we have to be more intentional with our decision making, our thinking, our feelings, by tuning into our emotions. Moving on, it's going to be self-compassion, right? So we're going to be able to be nice to ourselves. Good things take time, but we got to treat ourselves with empathy, treat ourselves with respect, right? And it's going to be able to offer some goodness to others as we're able to have that self-compassion for ourselves. So when you understand your own needs, you're able to express that without any shame or guilt by, like I said, being nice to yourself, but also doing the self-reflective work. But moving on to next, it's going to be emotional awareness, right? So becoming aware with your own emotions helps you identify underlying needs and communicate them clearly, right? Which is a great thing. Moving on to research insights is going to be a study from the International Journal of Social Psychology in 2022 suggests that individuals who practice self-connection techniques like those in nonviolent communication experience a significant increase in emotional intelligence and personal well-being, right? So practicing these things, being personal with these things and intentional with these things are going to be able to help you become more confident, more stronger, know how people operate, because you have more of that self-awareness, and being more empathetic is going to help you just know how to connect with others, have trust, and have better bonds. So overall, doing this work is going to help you down the line. But moving on, let's dive into implementing nonviolent communication in our daily life, right? So consistency, practice makes us better, perfect, damn near, right? When we're integrating this into our daily life, right? So let's talk about that. So some key points we'll just dive right into is going to be at home, right? So you can use nonviolent communication to resolve conflicts with loved ones by, focusing and fostering on feelings and the needs instead of blame, right? So really understanding how other person feels, right? Something happened, someone made a mistake. Stop blaming them, stop jumping in quickly to just, be aggressive in the situation, but really understand what's going on, right? And we can start by this, as mentioned, at home, right? But let's move on to something a little different, right? At work, right? So we can improve teamwork and collaboration by addressing misunderstanding in a peaceful, respectful way with an empathetic approach, right? So I want to be able to take that into consideration. Next is going to be in a social setting, right? So practicing empathy and active listening to foster better relationships with family, friends, and acquaintances in different settings is and can be used as well. But like I said, we gotta just, like I said, understand how other people feel, not just being tuned by ourselves, but being more understanding. Moving on to some research in regards to, like I said, how we're able to benefit this into our daily life. Let's talk about some research. According to the Journal of Applied Communication Research, workplaces that implement nonviolent communication strategies saw 25% improvement in team collaboration and conflict resolution. So when we implement this approach, and use that strategy, it's going to be able to benefit how we operate as a team, as a family, as a unit, and as one, right? So like I said, let's be more empathetic, let's be more open-minded, let's be more forgiving, let's be more, intentional, and things will improve. In regards to building compassionate connections with nonviolent communication, abbreviated as NVC, we talked about nonviolent communication as a powerful approach that can transform the way that we connect with others by fostering, once again, empathy, understanding, and sharing humanity. We can resolve conflicts more peacefully and create stronger, more compassionate relationships with people. If you found this video was beneficial, give it a thumbs up, comment if necessary, and subscribe for more intentional content on the way. Thank you for thriving me. Take it easy.